The observation deck of the Galactic Council's military testing facility floated in the darkness of space. Through the massive windows, 17 alien delegates watched the artificial planet. Below, it had been built for one purpose: to test warriors. Counselor and of the Syndicate stood at the front of the group. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence as he studied the data scrolling across his tablet. For 30 years, the Council had watched humanity. They had studied their history, their wars, their strange and violent path to the stars. Today they would finally see human warriors in action. The humans are deploying their elite soldiers, announced director of the Obsidian Eye. He was a tall and thin with gray skin that seemed to absorb light. His intelligence division had spent decades building files on every species in the galaxy. Humanity had become his obsession. They call them special forces. The delegates leaned forward as the display screens flickered to life. On the surface below, a simulated enemy installation spread across 2 kilometers of rocky terrain. Guard towers, bunkers, patrol routes, automated defense systems. The Council's military engineers had designed it to be impenetrable. How many human warriors are participating? Asked Admiral of the Empire. He was a massive creature, covered in thick plates of natural armor. His species had conquered 6 star systems through raw strength. He respected power. Checked his notes. 12. Made a sound of disgust. 12 soldiers against that installation. The humans insult us with this demonstration. Perhaps we should watch before we judge. Counselor said quietly. The screens showed the 12 humans emerging from their dropship 3 km from the target. They wore no heavy armor. They carried weapons that looked almost primitive compared to Council's standard issue. They moved in complete silence. Then they vanished. The delegates exchanged confused glances. The tracking systems showed the humans still moving, but they had somehow become invisible to every visual sensor. They left no heat signatures. They made no sound. They were ghosts. Where did they go? Admiral demanded. Gray face had grown pale. They are still approaching. Our sensors simply cannot track them effectively. For the next 4 minutes, the delegates saw nothing. The installation's guards continued their patrols. The automated systems reported no contacts. Everything appeared normal. Then the lights went out. Every display, every sensor, every piece of technology in the installation died at once. In the darkness that followed, the delegates heard sounds through the audio feeds. Brief sounds, a muffled impact, a short cry cut off before it could become a scream, the crack of weapons firing in controlled bursts, bodies falling. The emergency lights activated after 47 seconds. The screens showed corridors filled with unconscious guards, command centers where officers slumped over the console, security stations where entire squads lay in neat rows, disabled but alive. The 12 humans stood in the central control room. They had not killed a single defender. They had simply turned off an entire military installation, like someone flipping a switch. Simulation complete. Mechanical voice announced. Time elapsed 5 minutes and 42 seconds. Defender casualties 0, fatalities 217. Incapacitated. Attacker casualties 0. Admirals. Armored plates rattled. It was the equivalent of shivering. That is not possible. Counselor and turned to these special forces. How many does humanity possess, our estimates suggest, approximately 50,000 across all their branches of service, 50,000 ghosts, and whispered 50,000 warriors who can walk through walls and disable armies without making a sound. The delegates began speaking over each other. Fear had entered the room. It spread like a disease, infecting every representative, every military advisor, every politician who had come to observe. They had expected to see impressive soldiers. They had not expected to see something that made their own elite warriors look like children playing at war. Admiral raised his voice above the chaos. We must act. These humans are too dangerous to leave unchecked. I recommend immediate containment protocols. Several delegates voiced their agreement. Others argued for caution. The debate grew heated. Through it all, remained silent. He was watching the human commanders on a separate screen. General and her staff stood in their observation room, monitoring the same feeds as the council. They were discussing the demonstration in calm, professional tones, but something about their body language troubled him. The humans were not proud. They were not boastful. They showed no signs of wanting to intimidate or impress. Instead, they seemed almost amused. General had a slight smile on her weathered face. Her officers exchanged glances that could not interpret. It was the expression of someone watching a child show off a simple trick while keeping the real magic hidden. Director counselor and called out, "You have studied humanity longer than anyone. What is your assessment?" Chose his words carefully. The special forces are extraordinary. There is no question. They represent a threat that we must take seriously. He paused. However, I believe we may be missing something important. What could we possibly be missing? Admiral growled. We have seen their best warriors. We know what they can do. We asked to see their elite forces, and they showed us. But consider this: when we demonstrate our military power, we show everything. We want potential enemies to see our full strength. It is basic strategy. He gestured toward the screen, showing General, these humans showed us exactly what we asked to see, nothing more. Why would they hold back unless they had something worth hiding? The room fell silent. Counselor and studied the human general's face on the screen. You think the special forces are not their true strength? I think, said slowly, that we have been asking the wrong questions. We asked to see their best warriors. Perhaps we should have asked to see their ordinary ones. Admiral dismissed this with a wave of his massive arm. Ordinary soldiers are ordinary. That is what the word means. The elites are always the true measure of a military. For our species, yes, agreed, but humans are not like us. They never have been. Every assumption we have made about them has proven wrong. Why should this be different? The debate continued for hours. In the end, the council voted to implement limited containment protocols. Human military expansion would be monitored and restricted where possible. Trade agreements would include clauses limiting weapons technology transfer. Diplomatic pressure would keep humanity contained to their current territories. Voted with the majority, but his doubts remained. That night, alone in his office, he pulled up the files on human military structure. He read about their training programs, their physical requirements, their standards for basic soldiers. The numbers troubled him. Special forces underwent years of additional training beyond standard Military service, they were selected. From the top fraction of a percent of applicants, they were exceptional by any measure, but what did that say about the baseline? What kind of foundation produced warriors like those ghosts on the observation deck? Began drafting a new intelligence request. He wanted to see human regular infantry in action. Not their elites, not their specialists. Just ordinary soldiers doing ordinary work. He suspected the answer would change everything. 6 months later, he would learn just how right he was. The distress signal reached council space on a quiet morning. Within hours, quiet turned to chaos. Station was a trading hub that floated in neutral territory. It belonged to no empire and served all of them. Merchants from 40 different species walked its corridors. Families lived in its residential sections. Diplomats used its conference halls to negotiate peace treaties. For 200 years it had stood as proof that the galaxy could cooperate. Now it had become a hostage. The hegemony had arrived with a fleet of warships and an army of soldiers. They were not members of the Galactic Council. They did not follow council laws. They followed only strength, and they had decided to demonstrate theirs. Counselor and stood in the emergency command center watching the reports scroll across his screen. 40,000 hostages, 62 different species, children in the schools, elderly in the medical centers, workers who had simply gone to their jobs that morning and found themselves prisoners. Their demands are unacceptable, Admiral announced to the assembled delegates. His voice was heavy with frustration. They want us to cede 3-star systems to their territory. They want access to our trade routes. They want recognition as a legitimate galactic power. And if we refuse, asked another delegate, they execute 100 hostages per hour until we agree. The room erupted in arguments. Military advisors proposed assault plan. Diplomats suggested negotiations. Everyone had an opinion, and none of them were solutions, and had studied the tactical situation himself. The station was a maze of corridors, living quarters, and commercial districts. They had positioned hostages throughout the structure. Any conventional assault would result in massive civilian casualties. The Council's fleets could destroy the ships, but that would not save the people inside. We need precision, and said, cutting through the noise. We need soldiers who can move through that station and neutralize the enemy without triggering a massacre. Human special forces, Admiral growled. They are the only warriors in the galaxy capable of such an operation. It was an admission that clearly pained him. 6 months ago, he had voted for containment protocols against humanity. Now he was asking for their help and authorized the request. The human response came within the hour. General's face appeared on the main screen, her expression serious but not surprised. She had clearly been expecting this call. We have reviewed the tactical situation, she said. Station is a complicated environment, lots of civilians, lots of choke points. They are smart enough to use human shields. Can your special forces handle it? And asked. General was quiet for a moment. Our special forces are currently deployed on classified operations across 3 sectors. Recalling them would take at least 2 weeks. The room fell into shocked silence. 2 weeks at 100 hostages per hour. That meant thousands of dead before help arrived. However, General continued, we can have a standard infantry company on site within 18 hours. Admiral leaned forward. Standard infantry, you would send ordinary soldiers into this situation. The 47th Infantry Company, 4th Battalion, 180 soldiers, good people, solid training, they can do the job with respect. General said, we have seen what your special forces can do. They are exceptional warriors, but standard infantry against the— he shook his massive head. They are twice the size of humans. They are natural predators. Their soldiers are bred for violence. Your ordinary troops will be slaughtered. General's expression did not change. The 47th has faced worse odds. They will manage. You are talking about saving 40,000 lives, and said carefully, this is not a training exercise. If your soldiers fail, thousands of innocents will die. Are you certain that regular infantry can handle this mission? Something flickered in the general's eyes and could not read the emotion, but it looked almost like pride, or perhaps it was amusement. It was hard to tell. With humans, Counselor, she said, I understand your concern. You have built your understanding of human military capability around our special forces. They are impressive, I admit, but they are specialists. They train for unconventional warfare, infiltration, reconnaissance. What you need at station is not specialists. You need soldiers who can kick down doors, clear rooms, and hold ground against a determined enemy. She paused. That is what regular infantry does. It is what they train for every single day. The 47th will handle this mission just fine. The council debated for another hour. Some wanted to wait for special forces. Others argued that waiting would cost too many lives. In the end, they had no real choice. 18 hours was better than 2 weeks. Director requested permission to embed observers with the human force. He wanted to see these regular soldiers up close. He wanted to understand what made humanity think ordinary troops could succeed, where council elite forces would fear to tread. General agreed without hesitation. You might learn something, she said, and caught that strange look in her eyes. The 47th Infantry Company was already en route when the call ended. 180 human soldiers in a transport ship, racing toward a station full of monsters and hostages, spent the travel time reviewing his files. They were formidable opponents. They stood nearly 3 m tall. Their bodies were covered in natural armor. They had evolved as pack hunters on a death world, where the weak were eaten before they could grow old. A single warrior could tear through a squad of council soldiers without breaking stride. Against such creatures, the council would send their best troops with the heaviest weapons available. Even then, casualties would be severe. The humans were sending regular infantry with standard equipment. Either humanity was arrogant beyond measure, or they knew something the council did not. As the transport ship dropped out of hyperspace near station, found himself hopping desperately for the second option. 40,000 lives depended on it. He watched the human soldiers prepare for deployment. They checked their weapons. They reviewed the station layouts. They talked quietly among themselves about entry points and extraction routes. They did not look afraid. They did not look nervous. They looked like people going to work. Wondered if that should comfort him or terrify him. He would have his answer soon enough. The staging area was a converted cargo bay on a council cruiser. Director stood in the corner with his observation team trying to stay out of the way while recording. Everything. The soldiers of the 47th Infantry Company filled the space with controlled activity. They moved around each other, like parts of a machine, each person knowing exactly where they needed to be. There was no confusion. There was no wasted motion. Everything had a purpose. Had observed military forces from dozens of species. He knew what professional soldiers looked like. These humans were something else entirely. He approached a young female soldier who was checking her weapon for what appeared to be the 5th time. She was small by human standards, with short dark hair and calm eyes. Her nameplate read, "Corporal Hayes, may I ask you some questions?" said the corporal. Glanced at him briefly, then returned to her weapon. "Check, sure, talk while I work. You are aware of the enemy you will be facing. They are formidable warriors." "Yes, sir. Big armored aggressive pack hunters. We have studied their combat tactics." Watched her hands move over the weapon with practiced ease. "Does it concern you that you are not special forces? This seems like a mission that would require elite soldiers." Corporal Hayes paused. She looked at him with an expression that might have been confusion. "Sir, I'm not sure what you mean. We are infantry. This is what infantry does, but special forces are trained for hostage rescue. They are your best warriors. Special forces are trained for different things," Hayes said patiently. "Infiltration, long-range reconnaissance, unconventional warfare. They work in small teams behind enemy lines for weeks at a time. That requires a specific skill set." She slapped a magazine into her weapon and checked the sight. "What we are doing is direct action, breach and clear room to room fighting in close quarters. That is regular infantry work. We train for this every day." Pressed further, "Surely there are soldiers below you in skill, lesser warriors who handle easier tasks." The corporal stared at him. "Below us, sir, everyone in uniform meets the same basic standards. We all pass the same physical tests. We all qualify with our weapons. We all learn the same tactics." She shook her head. "There is no tier below regular infantry. We are the baseline. Special forces are the ones who go beyond that baseline. They do not replace us. They just do different jobs." The weight of her words settled over like a cold blanket. He had assumed that human military structure was similar to the Council's elite forces at the top, regular soldiers in the middle, and lesser troops at the bottom for garrison duty and simple tasks. But humans had no bottom tier. Their regular soldiers were trained to the standard that the Council reserved for elite units. Their special forces were not their best warriors doing regular work. They were regular warriors who had years of additional training for specialized missions. "What are your physical requirements?" asked to be a basic infantry soldier. Hayes rattled off numbers: running distances, weight carried, obstacle courses completed, combat tests passed. Each standard was impressive on its own. Together they described a level of physical capability that most Council species would consider exceptional, and every soldier meets these requirements. Has to. You do not graduate basic training otherwise. Looked around the cargo bay with new eyes. 180 soldiers. Every single one of them had passed tests that would qualify them as elite warriors in most galactic militaries. Every single one of them considered this normal. He found the company commander, a human named The captain was a stocky man, with graying hair and a face that looked like it had been carved from stone. He was reviewing the final assault plan with his platoon leaders. "Captain, may I observe your briefing?" Nodded without looking up. "Stay quiet and stay out of the way." Watched as the officers discussed entry points, timing, fields of fire, and extraction routes. They talked about thee as a tactical problem to be solved, not as monsters to be feared. They identified weak points in the enemy's defensive positions. They planned fallback positions in case things went wrong. "Though we'll use hostages as shields," one lieutenant said. "Standard practice for them, then." "We do not give them the chance," replied. "Speed and violence of action, we hit them so fast they do not have time to grab civilians. Once we clear a section, second squad holds it while first squad advances. No gaps, no delays." Rules of engagement. Are we free? Anyone holding a weapon is a valid target, but we check our targets before we shoot. One civilian casualty is one too many. Looked around at his officers. These people are counting on us. We do not let them down. Officers dispersed to brief their squads. Followed one group and listened as a sergeant explained the mission to his soldiers. The humans asked questions, good questions, tactical questions about angles and timing and backup plans. They absorbed information like sponges. Then they began loading their equipment. Watched a private who could not have been more than 20 years old. The young man strapped on body armor, ammunition, pouches, grenades, a medical kit, water, rations, and his primary weapon. When he was done, he was carrying nearly 40 kg of gear. "That is quite a load," observed. The private shrugged. "Standard combat load. You get used to it, and you will fight in all of that equipment." "Yes, sir. Run, climb, shoot, whatever needs doing." The private grinned. It was a strange expression given the circumstances. "The weight keeps us honest. If you cannot perform with full gear, you are not ready for combat." Performed a quick calculation. The average council soldier carried perhaps 15 kg of equipment into combat. These humans carried nearly 3 times that amount and considered it normal. He thought about the waiting on the station. They were large and strong. Yes, they were dangerous predators, but they had evolved on a world with light gravity. Their impressive size was partly an adaptation to easier conditions. Humans had evolved on a world with heavy gravity, a world with extreme temperature variations, dangerous predators, and scarce resources. They had no natural weapons, no armor, no claws or fangs. They had simply refused to die. Looking around the cargo bay, began to understand what that meant in practical terms. These soldiers were not elite warriors by human standards. They were average. They were the baseline. And the baseline was terrifying. Captain called his company to attention. 180 soldiers snapped to a unified posture, their equipment rattling briefly before falling silent. "You know, the mission said 40,000 civilians are waiting for us to think. They are predators and we are prey." He paused. "Show them how wrong they are." The soldiers responded with a sound that felt in his bones. It was not a cheer. It was not a battle cry. It was something deeper, a rumble of acknowledgement, a promise. They loaded into their assault shuttles, secured himself in an observer seat, his equipment recording everything. In 3 hours they would breach station. In 3 hours, the galaxy would learn what human, regular infantry could do. The assault. Shuttles attached to station at exactly 300 station time, 17 breach points, 17. Explosions, 17 entry teams pouring through the smoke and debris. Director. Watch from the command ship through drone feeds and helmet cameras. Images were chaotic at first, fire and smoke shouting, the crack of weapons. Then the chaos resolved into something far more disturbing. It resolved into efficiency. The humans moved in 4-person fire teams. Each team operated like a single organism with 4 sets of hands and 4 sets of eyes. They flowed through the corridors in tactical formations, covering angles, checking corners, advancing with relentless precision. First defenders died before they knew the attack had begun. The humans hit them from multiple angles, simultaneously, coordinated through their communication systems. Short bursts of fire targeted joints and weak points in this natural armor. The massive aliens went down. Hard contact, front 4 tangos. Voice called through the feed recognized it as Corporal Hayes, moving to flank. Another voice responded. Watched Hayes and her team pin down a group of warriors with suppressing fire, while a second team circled around. The flanking team appeared behind the aliens and cut them down in 3 seconds of concentrated shooting. Clear, moving to checkpoint Bravo. They did not celebrate, they did not pause, they simply moved to the next objective. They had expected to terrorize their hostages and negotiate from a position of strength. They had not expected a force that would come straight at them without hesitation. They had not expected prey that fought back. Watched a warrior charge directly at a human fire team. The alien was enormous, easily 3 m tall. Covered in thick natural armor, it moved with the speed of an apex predator. Closing for the kill, the humans did not run, they did not scatter, they planted. Their feet raised their weapons and fired in unison. The first shot staggered the charging alien. The second volley dropped it to its knees. The third put it on the ground permanently. The fire team stepped over the body and kept moving. They are not afraid, Counselor, and said quietly. He was watching the same feeds from across the command center. They are twice their size and they are not afraid. They are trained to control their fear, replied. But I think it is more than that. I think they have faced worse. Assault continued. The humans cleared section after section, moving through the station like a cleansing fire. They freed hostages and directed them to evacuation points. They eliminated resistance with brutal efficiency. But they were not invincible. Watch the ambush catch one fire team. In a crossfire, 2 humans went down. Immediately, the other 2 grabbed their wounded comrades and dragged them to cover while returning fire one-handed. Medic, we have 2 down at Junction 7. Medical team appeared within seconds. They worked on the wounded soldiers while they held back the attack. So, one of the wounded humans, a young man, with blood covering half his face, pushing away the medic and trying to get back into the fight. Stay down, Private. I can still shoot, Sergeant. You have head wound. Stay down, the private cursed but obeyed. His squad eliminated the remaining and secured the junction. The wounded were evacuated. The advance continued. Casualties mounted on both sides. Tracked them on his display. 8 human soldiers killed, 23 wounded, several severely, but the losses were Catastrophic, over 300 dead, another 200. Wounded or captured, they're defensive. Positions were collapsing faster than they could reinforce them. The helmet camera of Sergeant provided a view that would never forget. The sergeant had taken shrapnel to her left arm. The limb hung uselessly at her side, blood soaking through a hasty bandage. She was still directing her squad with her voice, while firing her weapon one-handed. First team, clear that room. Second team, cover the stairs. Move, move, move. Her soldiers obeyed without question. They trusted her completely. She had earned that trust through years of shared training and hardship. Sergeant, you need medical attention. Someone said through the comm. I will get attention when the mission is done. Stay focused. She led her squad for another 30 minutes before accepting evacuation. By then they had cleared 2 full sections of the station. The commander made a final stand in the main cargo bay. He had gathered his remaining warriors around a group of hostages, hoping to use them as leverage. The humans surrounded the bay and called for his surrender. His response was to execute a hostage. What happened next was not pretty. It was not the clean surgical violence of special forces. It was something. The humans breached the bay from 4 directions. They poured fire into the positions with cold fury. The massive aliens fell like trees in a storm. The commander killed 2 more hostages before a human sniper put a bullet through his eye. When the smoke cleared, 38,912 hostages were alive. 12 had died during the assault. The humans mourned each one as a personal failure. At 3:47, Captain reported the station secure. Total mission time 47 minutes. Reviewed the final numbers. 8 human soldiers dead, 23 wounded. Casualties exceeded 600. 180 regular infantry soldiers had broken an occupation force of nearly 1,000 warriors. They had done it in less than an hour. They had done it while carrying 40 kg of gear through a maze of corridors. They had done it while protecting 40,000 civilians. This was not the ghost-like precision of special forces. This was something different, something in many ways more impressive. It was the steady, relentless application of overwhelming competence. It was soldiers doing their jobs with skill and dedication that bordered on the mechanical. And this was their baseline. Began composing his report. The council needed to know what he had witnessed. They needed to understand the implications. Humanity's special forces were exceptional warriors, but they were specialists. They were the scalpel that humanity used for delicate work. Regular infantry was the hammer, and humanity had millions of hammers. The galaxy was about to learn a very uncomfortable truth about the species it had tried to contain. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was the most heavily attended in decades. Every member species sent their senior delegates. Every military advisor cleared their schedule. The attack on station and its resolution had sent shock waves across the galaxy. Director stood at the podium, his gray skin looking almost white under the bright lights. He had not slept since returning from the assault. There had been too much data to analyze, too many implications to consider. Distinguished delegates, he began, I must revise every assessment the Obsidian Eye has made regarding human military capability. Our previous analysis was not merely incomplete, It was fundamentally wrong. He activated the main display, numbers, and statistics filled the screen. 6 months ago, we observed human special forces in action. We saw warriors who moved like ghosts, who could disable entire installations without being detected, who represented capabilities beyond anything in our own arsenals. We based our threat assessment on these observations. Paused, we were looking at the wrong soldiers. He changed the display to show footage from station. The council watched in silence as regular human infantry moved through corridors, engaged warriors, and systematically dismantled an occupation force that should have been able to hold the station indefinitely. These soldiers are not special forces. They are not elites, they are standard infantry, the baseline, the minimum acceptable standard for human ground forces. Let that sink in. Every physical requirement they meet, every tactical skill they demonstrate, every piece of equipment they carry into battle is considered ordinary by human military standards. Admiral spoke from his seat. What are you saying, Director? I am saying that we made a critical error in our analysis. We assumed human military structure was similar to our own. Elite forces at the top, regular soldiers in the middle, lesser troops at the bottom. Shook his head. Humans have no lesser troops. Their regular infantry would qualify as elite forces in any council. Military, their special forces are regular soldiers who have years of additional specialized training. He displayed new numbers. Humanity maintains approximately 1.2 million active infantry soldiers at any given time. Another 8 million trained reservists can be mobilized within weeks. Their special forces number fewer than 50,000. The chamber erupted in murmurs, waited for quiet before continuing. When we implemented containment protocols, we were worried about 50,000 exceptional warriors. We should have been worried about 9 million soldiers who consider excellence ordinary. Counselor and raised a hand. Director, what is your recommendation? Before could answer, another voice cut through the chamber. Perhaps I can address that. General walked to the front of the room. She moved with the easy confidence of someone who had nothing to prove. Her uniform was simple, her decorations few. She looked like exactly what she was, a professional soldier who had spent decades serving her people. I understand that many of you are frightened, she said. You have seen our capabilities. You are running calculations about what would happen if humanity decided to expand through force. Let me save you some time. She activated a display of her own. Maps appeared showing human territory and its relationship to council space. Humanity has no interest in conquest. We have seen what empire costs. We have read our own history. We know that every nation that tried to rule others through force eventually collapsed under its own weight. She met the eyes of delegates around the room. We are not conquerors. We are survivors. General walked to the center of the chamber floor. Our species did not evolve at the top of the food chain. We were prey animals, soft skin, no claws, no armor, no venom. We survived because we learned to cooperate. We survived because we refused to give up even when the odds were impossible. We survived because we protected each other. She gestured toward the footage from stations still playing on the screens. Those soldiers did not fight because they wanted glory or territory. They Fought because 40,000 innocent people needed protection. That is what humanity does. We protect. Then why train such formidable warriors? Admiral asked. His tone was genuinely curious now, the fear fatting into something that might have been respect. Because we know what it is to be prey. General replied, we know what happens when you cannot defend yourself. We know what monsters do to the helpless. Her voice hardened. We will never be helpless again, and we will never stand by while others are victimized. If we have the power to stop it, she let silence fill the chamber for a moment. Humanity offers the Galactic Council simple arrangement. We will be good neighbors. We will trade fairly. We will honor our agreements. We will not expand into territory that belongs to others. She paused. But if anyone threatens our people or threatens the people we have sworn to protect, they will learn very quickly why our regular soldiers are feared more than our special forces. The vote took less than an hour. The council dissolved all containment protocols against humanity. They upgraded diplomatic relations to full partnership status. Several species began immediate negotiations for mutual defense agreements. Director returned to his office after the session. He had more work to do, new assessments to write, new files to compile. The Obsidian Eye would need to completely restructure its understanding of human capabilities. But first, he wrote a personal note that he added to the classified archives. It was a warning for future analysts who might make the same mistakes he had made when assessing humanity. Remember this: their special forces are exceptional warriors trained for specialized missions. They are the scalpel, but do not focus on the scalpel. Focus on the hammer. Focus on the millions of regular soldiers who consider excellence ordinary. Focus on the species that refuse to die when the universe tried to kill them. He paused, then added a final line. When humanity shows you their best warriors, they are being polite. When they show you their regular soldiers, they are being honest. Fear the honesty more. Across the galaxy, the hegemony received intelligence reports from station. Their military council studied the footage. They analyzed the human tactics. They calculated the implications. Within a month, they began reinforcing their borders, not against humanity. They knew they could not win that fight. They reinforced against any conflict that might draw human attention to their territory. The predators had learned something important. There was a new species in the galaxy that did not behave like prey, a species that would not run, species that would not hide, a species that would stand its ground and fight with a fury that made the look tame by comparison. Humanity had called their elite warriors special forces. The galaxy had learned to fear them. Now the galaxy understood something far more terrifying. The regulars were worse, and there were millions of them in every corner of human space, training every day to be even better. Not because they wanted to conquer, not because they wanted to dominate, but because they remembered being prey. They would never be prey again, and anyone who forgot that lesson would learn it the same way they had learned it in blood and fire, and the relentless advance of soldiers who simply refused to stop. That was humanity's gift to the galaxy. That was humanity's warning. The universe had tried to kill them. It had failed, and now they were ready for anything.